You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan. Kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome, dear listeners. Every year, millions of Muslims journey to Mecca in a pilgrimage of devotion to God, humility, and rebirth. This sacred ritual culminates in Eid al-Adha, which is the festival of sacrifice, which honors the trials of Prophet Ibrahim, also known as Abraham, and his wife Hagar and their son Ismail. This story isn't just Islamic, it's shared across faiths. Today, we will discover how one woman's courage in the desert became the foundation of faith for billions. We walk with Abraham, who's called in the Genesis as father of many nations, whose lineage through Isaac and Ismail seeded Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We also honor Hagar, the Egyptian noblewoman, history often sidelines, yet whom Muslims revere as the matriarch of Mecca. And we recognize Ismail, also appointed by God as a prophet, whose direct descendant is none other than Prophet Muhammad. We occasionally turn to Jewish and Christian texts to deepen our understanding. Imagine 4,000 years ago, Abraham is born in Babylon, modern-day Iraq. He's married to Sarah, but they can't have any children. They're too old. Now, God describes Abraham as a Hanif, someone with a pure faith who doesn't really belong to any particular religious sect. He's just purely devoted to God. God instructs Abraham, go, teach the oneness of the divine. So, Abraham leaves everything behind, his home, his land, and he journeys on with a few followers, along with his wife, far and wide. And now this is where it gets very interesting. Abraham ends up in Egypt, and the Pharaoh is so impressed by him and his wife that he gives his princess from his court to them. Her name is Hagar, in Arabic, Hajar. Some stories suggest that the Pharaoh was hoping she would influence Abraham to worship the Pharaoh's gods, but instead, Abraham welcomed her into the family, and you can already see God's plan starting to unfold. And this is where the different scriptures tell the story a bit differently. And it's fascinating to see how they complement each other. One account in Genesis describes Hagar as Sarah's servant, who's meant to bear Abraham a child. But there's another version where Sarah herself is struggling with childlessness and actually encourages Abraham to marry Hagar so they can finally have a family. Whatever the exact circumstances, Hagar finds herself in deep distress at some point. And that's when an amazing thing happens. An angel appears to her with this incredible message. God has heard your suffering. You will bear a son. Name him Ishmael, and his descendants will be beyond numbers. Muslims believe this promise is actually foreshadowing the coming of Prophet Muhammad. When Abraham is 86 years old, his first son Ishmael is finally born. God makes Abraham another promise that Sarah will also have a son, and his name will be Isaac. God makes it crystal clear that both sons matter. He says, my covenant with Isaac is eternal, but Ishmael, I will make of him too a great nation. So we're talking about two divine promises, not just one. But as you might expect, family tensions started brewing. Sarah gets worried that Ishmael might claim Isaac's inheritance, so she pushes Abraham to send Hagar and the boy away. Abraham is not convinced. In fact, he's very torn. After all, this is his son. But then God steps in, because God has a plan, and reassures him, trust me, Ismail will be blessed and become a great nation unto himself. He will flourish. So Abraham does what God asks. He takes Hagar and Ishmael out into the desert. And you can imagine how heartbreaking that must have been for him. But they're wandering around under the scorching sun with no direction whatsoever. And some traditions say that in order to get somewhere, Angel Gabriel came down to help them, guide them, and others talk about a holy wind that led them to this barren valley in the middle of nowhere, or at least that's what it seemed. But get this, that exact spot where they found refuge, that's where Abraham and Ishmael would later build a cubical structure called the Kaaba. Now let's fast forward to today. That same Kaaba is Islam's holiest site today and the world's largest religious gathering site. We're talking about 25 million visitors a year, with 2.5 million pilgrims who literally walk in Abraham, Ishmael, and Hagar's footsteps. So there they are, Hagar with her child, completely alone in the desolate valley with nothing but a small bag of dates and water. As Abraham is walking away and he's disappearing beyond the dunes, Hagar gets nervous and she calls out to him because she wants to know why he's leaving. And she says, "Has your Lord commanded you to leave us here?" And when he says yes, her voice echoes across the empty sands. And then she says, "Then he will not abandon us." Now, can you imagine that level of faith and conviction? I'm always amazed by that. But then reality sets in. The dates are gone, the water is finished, and the little boy is writhing with thirst under the merciless sun. As Ishmael starts fading, Hagar doesn't just sit there and weep, she begins to run. 7 times she sprints back and forth between 2 hills, Safa and Marwa, desperately seeking water. For people, any sign of hope. Her feet are getting scorched by the burning sun, but there's absolute conviction in her heart that she is not going to be abandoned. And then just when despair is about to swallow the entire valley, something miraculous happens. Angel Gabriel comes forth with the tip of his wing, strikes the ground at the feet of Ishmael, and out comes gushing, pure, life-giving water from this barren land. This water today and then was called Zamzam, and 4,000 years later, that same well is still pumping out 700,000 liters of blessed water every single day without ever drying out. Pilgrims from all over the world drink it for healing, for nourishment, just like Hagar did when she first discovered this miraculous spring that saved her son's life. Now, here's where the story gets even more amazing. Once the well becomes visible, birds start circling overhead. And that's always a sign to desert travelers that there's water below somewhere. So a tribe called the Jurhum sees these birds and comes to investigate. They end up negotiating with Hagar so they could settle there. And that's how the town is born. And that town today is called Mecca. Ismail grows up in this tribe. He learns Arabic from them. He marries into the community, and it starts a family line that would stretch through the generations, from his son Qadir to Adnan and to the Quraysh tribe, culminating in Prophet Muhammad himself. Now we come to the most interesting moment in Abraham's story. Both the Quran and the Bible tell us about his dream that he had where God commands him to do the unthinkable, to sacrifice your son, your beloved flesh and blood. In Islamic tradition, the son is Ismail, his firstborn. Can you imagine getting a command like that? The Quran tells us in chapter 37 that Satan himself tried to dissuade them all. He visited Abraham, then Hagar, and then even the young Ishmael, trying to plant doubt, trying to get them to disobey, but all three of them held firm in their faith. And when Abraham finally tells his son about this divine command, the young boy just replies, "Father, do as you are commanded." The trust, the submission is just breathtaking. So Abraham raises the knife, and at that exact moment when he's about to do the unthinkable, God intervenes. He replaces the boy with a ram. The sacrifice happens, but not the way anyone expected. In fact, the story doesn't even end there. Right after this incredible test, Abraham receives great news through a revelation. God tells him, "And we gave him good tidings of Isaac, a prophet from among the righteous." So Isaac, the son of the promise that Abraham was promised by God, is born after this ultimate test of faith, according to the Quran. Here we have two sons, two different destinies, one overarching truth that ties it all together. When you have absolute trust in God, what looks like sacrifice actually becomes deliverance. That's the lesson that echoes through both Islamic and biblical traditions, even to this day. Years later, Abraham returns to Mecca, and that's when God instructs him and Ishmael to build a sanctuary, a house for the worship of the one God. According to Islamic tradition, when Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden, a celestial stone was sent down from the heavens to mark the place where they should build their first temple. As years passed, the altar and heavenly stone were lost during Noah's flood and completely forgotten by humanity. But God doesn't forget. This heavenly object that connects heaven to earth, along with the original location of Adam's altar, was revealed to Abraham by none other than Angel Gabriel, as Abraham was trying to figure out where to build his temple. So father and son are together, building a sacred structure, brick by brick, raising it as far as they could possibly go. Kaaba is very modest, 35 feet by 50 feet high. Then God is telling Abraham, right after he's finished with the Kaaba, that he must establish pilgrimage. And it tells him, pilgrimage to the house of Kaaba is a duty owed to God by people who are able to undertake it. Ismail gets left in charge of the Kaaba as Abraham goes back home, becoming its caretaker and managing the Hajj. Before Islam was established in Mecca, and this is pre-Islam, the Arabs treated the place as sacred ground. They'd make annual pilgrimages regularly to honor Abraham's sacrifice as well as his sons. Over the centuries, the Arabs moved away from monotheism and started using the Kaaba to worship and store their tribal deities. Then around the year 605, a fire took place and it partially destroyed the Kaaba structure. And during the rebuilding work, they had to remove the black stone. And when it came time to put it back, that's where all the drama began. As you can imagine, every tribal leader of Mecca wanted to honor the setting of the black stone back in its rightful place because they understood its importance. And can you imagine the politics involved? These are proud tribal leaders, and nobody wants to back down. They were at a complete impasse, potentially headed towards a conflict, when somebody saw a 35-year-old man named Muhammad emerge, just as they were trying to figure out how to solve this impasse. And now this is 5 years before this gentleman named Muhammad would become a prophet. So this was pre him being a prophet. He was a trader and came from a very good family. He was known to the Meccans for his righteous character. They all called him Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy one. So they brought the problem to him to see if he could solve it for them. And he came up with a brilliant solution. He asked the tribal leaders to bring him a large cloth. And then he put the black stone right in the center of it. And then he asked each clan leader to grab a corner of the cloth. Together, they all carried the stone and set it in place. Genius, right? Every tribe gets to share in the honor and nobody's pride gets hurt. Fast forward about 25 years. Prophet Muhammad has become a prophet at this point. And in 630 CE, he returns from Medina and comes back to Mecca and rides around the Kaaba 7 times on his camel, touching the black stone with his staff as a gesture of deep reverence. In that moment, you can see Abraham's ancient prayer being fulfilled, his request to God to rise up a great prophet among Ismail's descendants. As Islam was established in Mecca, Prophet Muhammad restored the Kaaba to its original purpose as a house of pure monotheism. The interior and exterior of the Kaaba were left completely empty, and Hajj became one of the 5 pillars of Islam, connecting millions of believers back to Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael. Today, within the sanctuary of Masjid al-Haram, which is the entire complex, stands the Kaaba, a structure so simple it literally stops hearts because of its purity. This striking cube of stone is encased in this intricately woven black cloth decorated with gold calligraphy. And here's what makes the Kaaba so extraordinary. It is completely vacant inside, just sacred space, intentional emptiness that points beyond itself to the infinite. Embedded right into the eastern corner of the Kaaba is that precious black stone. Many Muslims believe that the black stone has this amazing ability to absorb the sins of anyone who touches it, and that's why so many people want to touch it. An elegant gold and glass encased edifice, the Station of Abraham, right beside the Kaaba, contains the stone which Abraham's actual footprints are on while he was building the Kaaba. It's pretty amazing when you see signs of Abraham there. And it's a reminder of the son and the father and the mother together helping build this town. Here, people from every corner of the earth stand in sisterhood and brotherhood, all connecting to the one God. Cultures, ethnicities blend into a sea of humanity, some glorifying God individually in whispered prayers, others collectively in unified chants. And 7 times they circle the Kaaba, clockwise, symbolizing the 7 heavens, like planets orbiting the sun, like moons circling planets, like stars dancing in the space. They become part of a larger cosmic order. Remember Hagar running from one hillock to another before the final act? Pilgrims have to complete the sa'i, meaning striving. This is the striving that Hagar did. We reenact this, and it's a ritual. Between these 2 hills, they stretch a mile apart, and the pilgrims run back and forth 7 times. This is not a leisurely walk. They are rush. It's fast walking, speed walking. They push their bodies to honor one woman's desperate search for water. This is Hagar's story made flesh. When she was left alone in the desert with her son, she ran between these 2 hills, as has already been mentioned, scanning the horizon, looking for any hope of survival. Her rushing symbolizes humanity's eternal striving, because we're all striving for something. We're striving for perfection, to achieve something, to have a purpose in our life. And this is also our way of refusing to surrender to despair. So there's profound irony here. For me, some men on this pilgrimage who ardently reenact Hagar's courage and conviction still consider women to be the weaker sex. Like a woman is not capable of taking care of herself, defend herself, protect herself. And some forbid their wives from walking too fast. I've seen it myself. They'll say, slow down, because they consider it to be immodest for a woman to fast walk. And I find that very ironic. But if we pause for a moment and we consider those who believe women incapable of making decisions, who insist women must always be accompanied by men, who think women have no role in shaping destiny, do they really contemplate who Hagar was and what she did and how she shaped our destiny? She shaped the destiny of billions of people, left behind with a child, completely alone, without a man to protect her. She shaped our destiny, and that's the truth. In Afghanistan, when I hear that women are locked up because they need the protection of men, I always wonder, have they read the story of Hagar? Do they know this? Why has she been so obscured? And why did God choose a woman for this pivotal role? Abraham could have just been asked to stay with her. No, she was deliberately left alone. And what if she had not submitted to divine will? What if she had been afraid and said, "Don't leave me"? Would the town of Mecca have been established? Would it have flourished? So I think it was a woman's belief, conviction, and self-sacrifice that stands behind Islam's holiest site. We proudly call ourselves founders of an organization, and I founded this, I'm an entrepreneur. Hagar founded Mecca. So when we speak of Hajj, and we speak of her, a woman whose faith turned desert into sanctuary, a woman, a seeker who's striving between Safa and Marwa, is reenacted by every pilgrim, man, woman, child, because Mecca's holiness began not with a king or a prophet, but the woman's love, her desperation, and her divine trust. This place is holy because it is where Abraham once stood with his son, where Hagar completed her desperate search, where Angel Gabriel first pronounced Prophet Muhammad as a prophet. There are so many significances to this town. And this is where Khadija, the tradeswoman, a successful tradeswoman, offered marriage to young Muhammad, who was not a prophet at that time. Where Bilal, an enslaved African, was freed by Prophet Muhammad to exemplify human equality, and then the Prophet asked him to stand on the very Kaaba that we've been talking about and said, "Go, call the prayer from the roof of the Kaaba." And this is where Fatima, the Prophet's daughter, and Ali, his son-in-law, grew up. They raised a family there and also endured deep hardships. This is where Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, spent years, spending all of her life after the Prophet's death, spreading the message of Prophet Muhammad. These spiritual ancestors have walked this very path. What unites all pilgrims across centuries is the same collective spiritual quest, the same hunger for the divine. We're all looking for the same thing. When the call to prayer sounds, pilgrims take their rightful place in the full view of the Kaaba. Behind, beside, in front, people from every continent praying humbly to God, asking for God's favor. They come from all corners of the world. Everybody in the Hajj is equal, has equal right to everything. It is one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen. The pilgrims drink Zamzam water, that same water that saved Ishmael, and feels like 4,000-year-old promise God never abandons those who trust him. And the pilgrims' prayers merge with Abraham's, "Make us vessels of your peace. Let our return home be the beginning, not an end." To the women listening, Hagar didn't wait for rescue. She ran 7 times between the impossible hills with a child depending on her. And from her striving came the holiest site in Islam. Our struggles aren't detours from our destiny. They're preparing us for it. So let us not have our voices be diminished. Let us not shrink our dreams. The world needs what you are carrying. Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you, and definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter, and your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.